space zombies, ancient multi-dimensional gods, genocidal alien religions, clandestine government agencies, and an AI Illuminati. Hidden in the shadows of the Halo universe are a deluge of horrors that the powers that be keep secret from the likes of you and I, and for good reason. But there's something far more common that shivers its enemy's timbers like nothing else. A weapon that, on the surface, almost seems cute. The way it operates, the ammo it fires, the way it looks, and the way it sounds. Everything about this gun is kinda just quirky and fun, but the reality is the polar opposite. I'm of course talking about the Needler. Pink isn't typically a colour that we associate with any kind of negative emotion, so when we see pink crystals flying through the air and our enemies erupting in a pink mist, we can't help but smile. But the reality of this thing is very different. Today, I want to change the perception of this thing from a quirky pink alien gun of fun into a tool that Marines, ODSTs, and Spartans alike genuinely fear. Because let me tell you, if you saw so little as a grunt waddling towards you, just one singular grunt waddling towards you with this thing in hand, you'd be needing a new space diaper. Right, so how the hell does this magic pink tool of death actually function? Well, the Needler and its long list of pink cousins all rely upon a type of crystal called blamite to function, which is harvested from the moon, Saban, that orbits the elite homeworld of Sanghelios. The name blamite comes from the word blam, which Bungie used for a ton of random stuff dating as far back as Marathon. In Halo, the word blam was used to censor certain words in-game and also on the Bungie forums, and they even went as far as naming Halo's engine the Blam Engine, which, fun fact, actually kind of carried forward into Destiny's engine as well. Back to the lore, blamite is harvested in vast quantities from Saban, but exists nowhere else in the galaxy. There aren't even any records that show that the Foreigners used it, or hell, that they even knew about it. It seems to be an exclusively elite, and I guess subsequently Covenant, source of munition. When it's harvested, the crystals are chiseled and refined until they're shaped like the shards that we see in the Needler, or any of the other needle-based weapons. But the inner workings of these crystals are actually beyond all known knowledge. One of the Halo universe's greatest mysteries, in fact. Rumour has it, the Prophets actually did know the mysterious properties of blamite and had documented it extensively within High Charity's archives. But the sad thing is that all that knowledge is now assumed to be lost after the Holy City's fall and infection, so kiss goodbye to any knowledge of blamite. But whether or not the Covenant truly understood the inner workings of blamite is kind of irrelevant, because at the end of the day, they understood the only thing that mattered: the lethality of blamite, and how to create a truly sadistic weapon to slice through the flesh, limbs, and organs of their enemies. But before we dive into the awful and graphic detail of why this thing is so feared, even by Spartans, a quick word from today's sponsor, Nexus War. Nexus War is a sci-fi simulation game where you explore, build, plunder, socialize, and take part in battles against the evil Astra, a species hell-bent on destroying the universe as one of 4 distinctive, powerful factions, as you uncover the mysteries of the universe. There's the humans, who are natural negotiators and also biotech geniuses. Then, the Thea, who are a hyper-advanced race of elegant beings born from the light of origin. The Izan, who are a super-intelligent alien race that specialize in robotic technology to crush their enemies. And the Oku, strong warriors who consume the minerals of a planet to bolster their strength. All factions have really cool, unique designs for you to choose from and specialize in as you conquer the galaxy, war with rivaling factions in PvE and PvP gameplay, and even take down powerful bosses. I went for the Izan because, personally, I think their heroes look insanely cool. Hino and Minerva are my 2 favourite of their heroes. They're really powerful and really detailed, and kind of look like a crossover between the Foreigners and the Protoss from StarCraft. You can even control these insane-looking mechs to lay waste to your enemies with as well. So, lay waste to the Astra and uncover the mysteries of the universe, and use my exclusive gift code in the description, which comes with over $100 of rewards. There are only 100 codes though, and let me tell you, those bad boys are going to run out quick, so make sure you don't miss out on it. Code in the description. The Needler is loaded with a varying number of 4.8 by 165mm sharpened, refined blamite shards. Now, this size is kind of weird, and as you'd expect, given that it's an alien round, it has no real-world comparison point. The closest comparison I can make is that they have almost the same diameter as the 4.6 by 30mm rounds at the MP7 chambers, and on average are the length of 1.650 BMGs. So these bad boys are very thin, but very, very long. When fired from the Needler, the Blumite shards retain their entire size and float through the air, and this is where things start to get a little bit scary for the poor individual that finds themselves on the receiving end. Within either the shards or the Needler itself is some kind of tracking device that can distinguish between friend and foe, which allows the shards to lock onto and also track their target. This means that the operator of a Needler no longer has to care about their accuracy, which is the most important element of winning a gunfight. And when accuracy no longer becomes a factor, then, well, the absolute lowest common denominators of your military become 1,000 times more effective. Yes, I'm looking at you. And this is only exacerbated by just how violent of a weapon the Needler is. It's something that the games just don't do justice at all. The Blumite needles kill in two horrific ways. Given their sharpness, they're able to penetrate armor of seemingly any rating, from marine plates that are likely level 3 or level 4 equivalent, all the way up to the titanium alloy of Mjolnir. Daisy 023 was the unfortunate victim of this. 3 regular needles from a Needler went straight through her Mark 6 breastplate. Man, you can be abducted at the age of 6 by a clandestine military organization, pumped full of God knows how many experimental chemicals, have billions of dollars worth of experimental armor put on you, and even then, nothing can stop this bad boy. Once through the armor, the needles pierce the skin like hot butter and lodge themselves inside the body of their victim, rupturing and destroying internal organs, causing heavy internal bleeds, and pulverizing bones. Even if you're able to avoid the vast majority of needles floating your way, all it takes is one of these suckers to land, and you're in major trouble. But if 1 or 2 of these needles happen to impale you, then all hope isn't lost just yet. If you have a medic on hand with a shit ton of biofoam, then you might just make it. But if multiple needles happen to impale you, then bad luck, my friend. It's time to say goodbye to this mortal realm. Blumite has to have some seriously unstable properties, because when roughly 7 regular-sized shards penetrate the same target, they initiate a super combine explosion within centimeters of the target's body. In some cases, this entirely eviscerates the victim, leaving nothing but a cloud of liquefied guts, organs, and blood among the pink mist left behind by the Blumite. But other victims aren't so lucky. In Ghost of Onyx, Spartan 3 Dante G188 was impaled by several needles that then proceeded to super combine, blowing the flesh off his chest and also exposing his ribs, but he survived. Not for very long, mind you, but it goes to show that it is possible to survive a super combine explosion. You'll just be wishing that you didn't. But an element of the super combine explosion that we don't really see in the games, at least, is the fragmentation effect. When the crystals explode, they shatter into 1,000,000 tiny sharp fragments that act like the shrapnel of a regular grenade, worsening the area of effect damage and injuring potentially anybody stood in close vicinity to the super combine. Or, if the impalee is unlucky enough to survive both being impaled by the Blumite needles and then the super combine explosion, the rest of their body and face are sprayed with the razor-sharp micro-shards of the needle. It doesn't matter which way you slice it. Impalement, super combine explosion, Blumite shards to the face, or lower regions, there is no easy, painless way out with the Needler. And when you realise that it's a weapon that requires literally 0 firearms expertise to use, and has rounds that literally cannot miss, you start to realise why this thing was so feared. But this evil, pink, alien triangle of death, shall we say, was only the tip of the Blumite iceberg. Blumite has been employed in a litany of other ingenious and also terrifying ways both before and after the war. The most obvious and, dare I say, iconic ultimate use of Blumite is with the needle rifle. If the Needler is the Blumite equivalent to a 9mm SMG, then the needle rifle is essentially a Blumite 308. That being said, the needles that this thing fires do seem to be almost the exact same size and caliber as the Needler, but their power is significantly higher. The Needle Rifle trades out the Needler's projectile tracking capabilities for a vastly increased velocity and stopping power, whilst retaining the ability to super combine, but also requiring fewer hits to do so. Its stopping power is so great that it's able to pass straight through the titanium alloy of a Mjolnir Mark V air assault helmet, through both sides of its wearer's skull, and then continue out the visor of the helmet with no noticeable reduction in the shard's velocity, although this could have just been an anomaly. It goes without saying, but the Needle Rifle's velocity makes it lethal at ranges that vastly outmatch the regular Needler, and along with the carbine, saw heavy use during the war and instilled fear into the hearts of many on its receiving end, regular troopers and Spartans alike. Knowing its effectiveness, the Covenant also experimented with Blumite in various light and heavy ways, but arguably the most experimental use of Blumite is the Energy Cutlass, used primarily by Jackals as a CQC weapon, but very rarely seen. Alternatively called the Pane Glass Saber, or the Chister in the Jackal language, this blade consists of a modified energy projector, which I presume is the same one that the Energy Sword uses, but with a chemically treated shard of Blumite attached, sharpened into a long blade, and even having crossguards attached. These cutlasses are extremely violent weapons, and utilize all the unique properties of Blumite, but in sword form. These things are razor sharp, able to slice straight through ODST armor and the trooper inside like raw meat. The user can even initiate a super combine explosion of the Blumite sword when it's stabbed in a victim, which comes with all the usual primary and side effects of a super combine blast. Put simply, the Energy Cutlass is a truly evil weapon. A terrifying sight to be seen wielded by a party of feral, fearless jackals, and hell, even grunts too. You know, those guys have very, very strong forearms, let me tell you. But as I mentioned, Blumite shards have also been refined into much heavier calibers as well, and see a lot of use as anti-aircraft munitions. Forward operating citadels that the Covenant would construct to defend key locations during the war would often be flanked by heavy citadel turrets that could be modified to load massive Blumite needles to counter aircraft. These needles operate almost identically to those of the regular Needler, tracking their vehicular or even infantry targets with ease, but do seem to super combine immediately upon impact, as opposed to having to stack up in their target, and still give off an incredibly deadly blast effect. Maybe the reason for this is that because the crystals are so much larger in size, they're inherently more unstable than those that the Needler fires. The Vampire Support Fighter also has a similar heavy needle turret as its primary anti-aircraft cannon as well, which fires up to 6 equally large and stable Blumite shards in a very quick succession that track and explode on impact, making it a true terror of the skies. But the Blumite experiments didn't stop when the Covenant fell. As the former Goliath splintered into various different pro- and anti-Great Journey factions, the battlefield became littered with more and more destructive Blumite-based weaponry. 2 elite weaponsmith brothers, Silset and Oberyn Shavar, warriors of the Arbiter Swords of St. Helios, created a modified carbine to be reminiscent of their homeworld of Saban, and also Silset's beloved needle rifle. This carbine, colloquially named the Blood of Saban, fires carefully carved Blumite crystals instead of the usual radioactive projectiles, capable of the same super combine effect as its inspiration. This heavily modified carbine is favoured by the Arbiter's marksman. On St. Helios' other moon, Kikost, the aptly named weaponsmiths, the Merchants of Kikost, laced the plasma bolts of Covenant plasmacasters with Blumite, adding an extra super combine-like explosion to their existing explosion that now emits stray needle shards as it detonates. As one of the main carriers of the Needler, Grunt engineers decided to step their Blumite engineering up a notch when they created the Grunt Goblin Mech. They outfit the Goblin with a double-barreled heavy needle cannon that shreds vehicles with massive Blumite shards, and can also be fired at 8 different hostiles at once using the device that's attached to the Goblin's back, known as the Shardstorm Launcher. Remember what I mentioned earlier about how scared you'd be if you saw just one singular regular grunt waddling towards you with this in hand? Well, imagine seeing one that's 10 times taller, made of metal, weighs about 50 tons, and has one of these that's 10 times bigger, and is double-barreled. I think you might need a few more space diapers if you saw that. And lastly, there exists an extremely rare variant of the regular energy sword, wieldable only by those native to Saban. This sword is the Lance of Saban. This heavily modified sword gives off a uniquely pink glow thanks to the blamite that's infused within the blade, although we don't know exactly how this changes the effect of the sword. Whether this modification is functional and makes the sword act similar to the energy cutlass with a super combine effect, or if it's purely for show and just to show off that these elites are in fact from the homeworld of blamite, is unknown. Blamite is the source of some of the most violent deaths in the entire Halo universe, and yet it remains one of the most mysterious things that humanity has ever encountered. How does it work? Why does it explode? How do the needles know who its users' allies and enemies are, and who to track and who not to track? Many questions that I'm sure the Office of Naval Intelligence are currently investing billions into answering. Given our continued alliance with the Arbiter and the Elites, it likely won't be long until humanity conjures up some equally sadistic needle-based weaponry like the ones that we've covered today that go beyond the simple needle-loaded chain gun of the Sword Warhawk. Although, that said, a needle minigun? That sounds pretty violent. So, with that said, what's your favourite needle-based weapon? Are there any blamite-based weapons that the Halo universe doesn't have yet, at least to our knowledge, that you'd like to see? Let me hear it down below in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed a good old dose of blamite. I've never made a video about the needler or any of the functionality of it, so I figured it was very, very long overdue. If you enjoyed, then, well, you know where the sub button is, and you know where the like button is. So I want to give a massive thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there, as per usual. And thank you all so much for watching, I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.